Replacing your old lead-acid batteries with lithium batteries on your sailboat is a hot topic right now. And hopefully I can give you some information that you haven't heard anywhere else. So let's get on with it. I'm Rebecca Childress on my 1976 Valiant 40 brick house. I had been sailing around the world for the last 13 years, but I lost my husband here in South Africa from COVID-19. But I have decided to keep sailing. After interviewing potential captains from all around the world, I found a great guy just one dock away from me, and we'll be leaving Cape Town soon. Hey, for those people that have been following our YouTube channel for a few years now, you know that Patrick has spent a lot of time developing a whole series of DIY sailboat and sailing videos. This channel and all of the people that watch us have really been a big part of our lives. Of course, with Patrick's passing, because he did all the filming and editing of these videos, I have been left with a big crash course in filming and editing in order to do these videos. However, many of you may not know that I actually did a lot of the researching and the design of a lot of the systems on our boat, and a lot of the technical know-how fell to me. And then of course, after we installed these things together, a lot of the troubleshooting when and if things broke, how to use the systems, fell to me as well. So I don't know if that's a surprise for you or not. Patrick had a real knack for DIY videos. He loved it, and he loved sharing his knowledge with all you guys. When Patrick passed, we actually still had a few videos in the pipeline, and this is one of them. Fortunately, it's sort of my baby. I did all of the selection and the research and the procuring of all of the parts, and I designed the whole system. I put it all together. Someday I hope to come close to meeting the standards that Patrick set for these videos, but it may take me a while. So let's go downstairs and learn about what we had to do and what we needed to know to convert our old lead acid batteries to lithium batteries on our sailboat brick house. Our batteries, again, for about the third time since we've been out, and we've been out for 12 or 13 years now, have just such limited capacity to be charged and to hold a charge. We can't go more than a day now without having to find a major way to charge the batteries. So the main reason that we went with Life P04 batteries instead of the old lead acid batteries was purely financial. Up front, lithium batteries are way more expensive, probably at least twice the price of lead acid batteries, but they last a lot longer. An average lead acid battery, even a very good quality lead acid battery like the Trojans that we had, has a cycle life of 500 cycles. In other words, you can deplete them and fill them back up 500 times. For us, that equated to about 4 years before we start suffering. Okay? On a lithium battery, the average for most lithium batteries are 2,000 to 3,000 cycles. On the batteries that we got, we have a warranty that they will go 4,000 cycles, so 8 times what our lead acid batteries did. So 4 times 8 is 32 years. I'll be really surprised if they last 32 years, but there is that possibility. If they last 20, I'll be thrilled. But we basically break even at 8 or 10 years, and then we don't, you know, we've spent what we would have spent on lead acid batteries to have at that time, but everything we get over and above 8 to 10 years, just frosting on the cake. Not to mention all of the other great bonuses that you get with lithium batteries. So the most obvious benefit, about 70% of the size of our old lead acid batteries, 70% of that footprint, these lithium batteries can fit in. The second advantage is weight. And indeed, our old Trojan T105 batteries, 675 amps, 6 of those batteries total, weighed about 320 pounds. 320 pounds. Our new battery weighs about 120 pounds. Big, huge difference. I think it might even be considerably less than that. So yeah, big weight savings and a significant savings of space as well. The third advantage, which is a real biggie, with lead acid batteries, You can't take them less than 50% without doing some damage, okay? With lead acid batteries, the last 20%, or even call it the last 15% of the battery, so from 85% charged up to 100% charge, it's really hard to do that. It's a very slow charge. It can only accept a few amps at a time, so everything gets dialed down, and it takes forever to get from 80 or 85% up to 100% charged. For us, that only really happened at the dock, which was pretty rare, or if we motored for a long time, which was also pretty rare. So we're always somewhere between, say, 55% and 80% charged on those batteries. So of the 675 amps, one could say you get half of that, but really you only get 30% of that, because to get it up beyond 80%, you're burning up fuel in your generator like crazy, or you have to have a ton of sun and a ton of solar panels and a ton of wind to actually get it above 80 or 85% charged with lead acid batteries. Lithium is just the opposite. It will take everything that you can throw at it at full blast all the way up to like 99.5% until it starts going slowly to charge the final little bit. So it's much easier to keep everything charged, especially if you don't have many solar panels or a lot of ways of charging. It really does a good job charging up. So that's a huge advantage and something really to consider. The next really big advantage really is maintenance. You know, since I've put the batteries in, and it's been nearly a year now, I haven't had to do any maintenance. I do have to walk by the battery monitor and look on the wall and just make sure that all of the cells are the same, and I'll show you a little bit more about that at the end of the video. But I don't have to put water in, I don't have to store battery water, I don't have to do anything. One thing though that you do need to do, just like with lead acid batteries, you need to make sure that your connections are always tight. A lot of cruisers are thinking that there's really only one kind of way to upgrade to lithium iron phosphate. They're looking at different manufacturers, but they're looking at all the same kind of batteries, and those are the drop-in batteries. There's lots of videos out there about why to upgrade to LiFePO4 batteries and why it makes so much sense. Ryan and Sophie Sailing put out a couple of good ones, so be sure to go over and see those videos. But nobody talks about the alternatives and why you may want to consider an alternative battery. So you have a couple of choices when you're buying lithium batteries. You know, you hear a lot these days, especially from other sailboats, that are buying drop-in batteries. And when I say drop-in, I mean, you know, it's this concept that you can just take a battery that's almost the same size as the lead acid battery that you're removing and just put it in place, hook the wires back up, and you're good to go. That's kind of a fallacy. It's not that easy. Beware of what's called a drop-in battery. Not so much because there's not some good quality batteries out there being made, but more because they aren't just simply drop-ins. And also, when something breaks inside of a drop-in battery, you basically have to get rid of the whole battery. You're not going to be taking them apart and replacing whatever went wrong or fixing them in any way. You're going to be throwing them out, and you're going to be having new batteries flown in, or you're going to have to source new batteries wherever it is that you are. So they are also the most expensive way to do lithium batteries. You often watch videos of people spending $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to upgrade to lithium batteries, and it doesn't have to be that way. A second way to get lithium batteries is to build the lithium battery yourself. That's obviously the cheapest way. It takes a lot more knowledge, a lot more expertise. I studied this option a lot. I almost went down this route, but just when I thought I knew enough and I could do it, and I'm fairly technical, I can figure a lot of things out, but just when I thought I knew enough, I'd fall upon something else that was just so mission critical. Since losing power mid-ocean or in a remote anchorage would be pretty disastrous, I decided that really I should leave this to the pros. Do it yourself is really for the 1% experts among us. But if you build it yourself, it's definitely the cheapest option. You can really pick each of the components that you want and really have the system exactly as you want it. The other alternative, and this is the route that I went down, is to buy a system from a company like Freedom One, or there's probably some other ones like it, but Freedom One is the big competitor in South Africa for this, or in Brazil, or many other parts of the world. But not only does Freedom One use all the individual components that the DIY lithium experts were recommending and that I was planning on using for a complete DIY build of a battery, but if one of these quality components break, they're easily replaceable. The whole battery doesn't have to be replaced. The whole battery doesn't have to be flown in with expensive custom duties. You can get a part flown in, or you can even carry spares right on board. A professional or a tech-savvy cruiser could replace the parts themselves if they really had to. And when you have access to the internet, Freedom One can even go into your system remotely to figure out what's wrong. So those are the three options for buying lithium batteries these days for sailboats. And again, you want to get Life P04 batteries. You don't want any other kind of lithium batteries on the boat. Life P04 are the stable batteries that are recommended for sailboats. The chargers used for the batteries, whether it be your solar charger, your wind charger, water charger, your diesel or electric generator, either built-in or portable, your alternator or alternators, will work because they'll make sure that the BMS is programmed to make sure your chargers never harm the batteries. And you know, most lithium battery or Life P04 battery manufacturers will tell you that the chargers that you have in place will be just fine. Go ahead and buy their batteries, right? But the truth of the matter is as they make the changes over the years to how they want you to charge it, they're not taking under account that the Life P04 profile that's on your solar regulator is going to be optimum for their battery. And the BMS will make sure that it doesn't get charged too high and that kind of thing. But is it going to be charged optimally at the best rate at the dock, at the best rate for when you're cruising and on the hook all the time? Those can be very different things. You need to be able to change those. And don't assume that because the battery manufacturer tells you that it'll be just fine with the chargers that you have. It may be fine, but it may not be perfect. You want it to be perfect. This is a big investment. The BMS protects the batteries, but what's going to protect your chargers? Your alternators, your solar regulators, your wind regulators, your water regulators, your shore power chargers, they are not protected in any way whatsoever from the BMS. So that's only to protect the battery. Keep that in mind. So what specifically must be considered? Most solar charge regulators, wind regulators, alternators will have different charge profiles for the different kinds of batteries. And you may even see something that's labeled as a lithium profile or a Life P04 profile. But this does not mean that it works for your Life P04 batteries. Every manufacturer of Life P04 batteries are coming up with new studies and figuring out new ways that their batteries are best charged and what is the highest charge to charge them to, the float, absorption, all that kind of stuff. They're coming up with new ways of doing it all the time, and they put out memos for that all the time. So if you have a profile on any one of your chargers on the boat that says Life P04, that's a set number, maybe 14.6, but gee, our Freedom One batteries, 14.6. The BMS will just shut that right off and you'll have no way to charge the batteries. They have to be charged at 14.2 or less. And depending on how you're using your batteries, you might want them at 13.8 or 14. So you want a custom setting on every charger that you have on the boat. Not one, not some of them, but every way that you can use to charge your boat, to charge your batteries, make sure that it has a custom setting so that you can go in there and you can tell the batteries to, float at such and such, to have absorption at such and such. You want that to be totally programmable. So you want custom, not a Life P04. Looking at my ProStar MPPT solar charger from Morningstar. The Morningstar does have a setting for lithium batteries, but I'm just going to use custom all the way across so I can program it exactly for these lithium batteries. Because every lithium battery is a little bit different. So how to put the dip switches on here to set it up. So I need one to be off, which it is, Number 2 for 12 volt is off, which it is. 3, 12 volt on. 4 for custom. I'm going to turn that on. Okay. And number 5 on for custom. Okay, that's on. 6 on for custom, which is up. Good. 7 equalization off. You never want to equalize. So wow, I only have to change one dip switch in the whole thing to change it from what I'm going to do from going from lead acid batteries to lithium batteries. A custom profile is absolutely critical on every charger you have. Anything at all that ever charges the batteries, especially the shore power charger. Down here, an important one, is my Pronautic 1250p charger. And right now, because I'm plugged into shore power almost all the time, and not using the Honda generator, which is my alternative way to use this, I just have it at 13.8 because if I'm on shore power, I don't need to be charging up the batteries fully because lithium batteries don't like to be fully charged. So when you leave them on shore power, you may want to have a lower setting. And 13.8 is where they get balanced. So it's just particular to my batteries. Your batteries could be different, but I hold it at 13.8. So you can see that only 1.1 amps is going in to maintain it at 13.8 instead of at 14. If I was out full-time cruising and using my Honda generator, I would just simply reprogram this, which takes just a minute or two, and I'd put it up to 14. Another biggie, a real biggie, is the alternator. The alternator, the charging of your batteries while motoring by engine. An alternator will push out as much as a battery cries for. And sometimes that's just too much for too long. And especially with a lithium battery that will let you charge it all the way up to 100% full blast, it may just be too much for your alternator to handle, and you may end up frying some diodes or just overheating the alternator. So you need a really, really good alternator controller, an external alternator regulator. We bought a Balmar Max Charge 614, does everything we needed to do and more. I have 3 different ways that that alternator is protecting my alternator, so my nice alternator will not fry up anytime soon. We had already put on a serpentine belt kit from Balmar to accommodate this high output alternator. These special pulleys that just slip over the existing pulleys with this new serpentine belt make it so that traditional alternator belts don't burn up from the excessive strain put on them at the higher output and the extended length of output.
I had to move the this screw from here to here, so now I have plenty of adjustment. Okay, so now we have the belt on, and just eyeballing it, it looks pretty darn good. I really don't see any wobble. So I think this is pretty good. Make connections, and I think we're pretty well done.
Belt Manager, that's a piece of electronics and software within the Balmar Max Charge 614 regulator that allows me to dial down what the maximum amount that the alternator will be allowed to put out. So in other words, if it can put out 170 like ours can, maybe I tell it to only put out 160 or 150. That way I'm not pressing it to an absolute maximum, because lithium batteries will take the maximum that the alternator can shove at it, and that's why alternators that worked fine with the lead acid batteries don't work so fine with the lithium battery. We use the Belt Manager to reduce how much our higher output alternator can put out, just to protect it, so it'll always put out. We also installed the temperature probe that goes between the alternator itself and the Balmar regulator, so that when it senses that the temperature of the alternator is getting beyond a certain amount, the preset amount is 210 degrees, but I set it down to 180 degrees just to be conservative. Yeah, maybe a little bit of overkill, but I don't want to wear out this wonderful alternator. So another thing that I did to protect the alternator was to install a relay. Just a simple relay, nothing fancy, no name brand that I can recommend. Just a very inexpensive device. Basically the CAN bus talking to the BMS of the Freedom 1 batteries directly talks to the relay. It's programmed right within the BMS to say, if you're going to shut down the batteries accepting a charge, then shut down the alternator if it's running. So how that happens is that the signal is sent from the CAN bus to the relay. The relay shuts down, which shuts down the power to the Max Charge 614 regulator. That in turn disables the alternator, and the alternator is no longer trying to put anything out, so there's no spikes and there's nothing bad that can happen. So it's a very robust, very simple, very fail-proof way to protect the alternator, aside from the alternator regulator protecting the alternator. Now, because I'm the type of person that has a backup for backup for backup, plan A, plan B, and plan C. So one thing that I did get, and it only cost $60, it's just cheap insurance, was a Sterling alternator protection device, a Sterling APT. It's cost about $60 or $70 US, and it's just another way to protect the alternator. Probably total overkill, but why not? So one really important thing when you install lithium batteries, Life P04 batteries, is that you can monitor the system. Yes, the BMS takes care of a lot of things, and setting your chargers also takes care of a lot of problems that you can have, but it's really good to be able to, if you're passing by a certain wall, to be able to just take a quick glance at the status of your batteries, what your amperage is coming in, going out, what your voltage is, how, what state of charge the batteries are at. It's really important to be able to just kind of keep an eye on those, make sure that everything's doing what it's supposed to do. Just because you have one doesn't mean after all these years that it's still working effectively. I have an old Link 2000 battery monitor, but I've always known we have bad wiring practice on Brick House. I mean, we have always used oversized gauges of wires and have had proper fuses and circuit breakers, but the Link 2000 uses a shunt like many battery monitors do. Ours over the year, due to inadequate labeling, bad memory, necessity, etc., has often been used as a negative bus bar rather than the dedicated shunt. We have used, and previous owners have used, that shunt as a negative post for many other things in the engine room. So whenever the engine starts, it all resets to 0 instantly. So it's always been sort of a problem child. We've never wanted to put in all new wires to make it right, so we've always just used that shunt as a negative battery post, and that's the way it's going to stay. But we needed to have better control of things than that, and it was actually less work and less expensive to get a new battery monitor and a more modern one that would be more accurate. We also have a Victron 712 BMV that we put in about a year ago, which is a pretty darn good battery monitor, though a bit small at the readout. It also runs off of a negative shunt, but now I have that negative shunt labeled to not connect anything else to that shunt. It is not a negative battery post. It's a shunt for battery monitoring. The Bluetooth ability, so I can look at it on my smartphone, sort of makes up for that inability for me to see it without glasses. But to have more than one person watching the battery voltage and amperage as a human backup for the system is important. And not everybody knows how to use a smartphone, and not everybody's going to be looking at their smartphone every few hours. The battery monitor needed to be bigger and easier for everyone aboard to keep an eye on. So the third battery monitor we got, the king of battery monitors, was the Victron CCGX, the color control unit that Freedom One practically requires for warranty on their batteries because it's just so accurate. Nothing can get past this. It's actually connected by a wire to the CAN bus of the battery, right inside the battery. There's no shunt outside of the battery box. This goes right to the heart of the battery, to the CAN bus, which is, I forget what CAN stands for, but it's basically a network that allows all the different units to talk to each other very effectively and very precisely. And so this is the color control CCGX, it's known as. So talk by Bluetooth to my telephone, and it has some great information. One of the most important things, I think, besides this 99% charge, 13.9 volts, 0 amps going in, 0 amps going out. And if I had other Victron things, these other system, AC input, AC loads, system, DC system, that would all have more information in it. But I only have the batteries and this monitor, so it's a pretty basic setup. Now, but one of the most important things to be able to go to menu and to look at this. Lowest cell voltage on the top line, highest cell voltage. So the lowest cell voltage of the 8 cells that are in there is 3.482. The highest cell voltage of all of the 8 cells that are in there is 3.487. That's very, very, very close to each other. And that means that all of the cells are very closely balanced, which is really important. The problem becomes if the lowest cell voltage is 3.3 and the highest cell voltage is 3.5 or something like that. When the highest voltage gets up there, the lowest cells are never going to get charged, or vice versa, depending on how things are set up in your BMS. So you always want to make sure your lowest cell voltage and your highest cell voltage is very, very close. And basically 0.02 of a difference or more is probably significant enough to worry about. So that the difference between 3.482 and 3.487 is 0.005, very small. So it's important to look at every so often. So that's one of the most critical things on this CCGX that I can see to think about. Yeah, the minimum and maximum cell temperature is probably important too. You don't want a huge difference between those. And installed available capacity is still 400 amp hours. So those are all important things to look at. And this is a great little unit to do it with, and really the required one for Freedom One batteries. It's a Victron Energy Color Control. CCGX is the short initials for it, and it's been flawless. So having the Victron CCGX coupled with the quality but easily replaceable components of the Freedom One battery, this makes it so we can easily monitor the health of the system in big, bright numbers every time we walk past the chart table. This human backup and understanding of it is absolutely essential. One on board knows when to raise the alarm to the captain. And I can't resist just a little update with the captain. Yeah, he's still here. I haven't scared him away yet. So pretty happy about that. And we're going to be hopefully heading out of here in about a month and a half and heading west. I really hope that you find the information in this video helpful and a little bit entertaining, hopefully not too boring. And if you do like it, please give me a thumbs up. That really helps a lot. If you have any questions, anything I haven't answered, I really do have a real passion for this subject, so please ask any question, and if I don't know the answer, I'll try to find out. I really do try to answer every single question and comment that you leave down below. And be sure to subscribe, because I have a few more technical videos in the pipeline, and then I have some other fun videos too coming up. So I hope you'll keep watching and you'll subscribe, and yeah, a big thumbs up would really, really be appreciated.